特别实用的单词 fancy， 你知道怎么用吗？提问：这句话里的 fancy 有多少种意思？ You're in a fancy restaurant with a fancy ass lawyer you fancy, and you fancy using fancy to make your English sound more fancy, but you don't fancy your chance of using fancy correctly.
I beg your pardon?
反正呢 fancy 有很多不一样的用法。第一种 fancy 表示高级 like a fancy hotel, a fancy handbag, a fancy car, or a fancy word like humorous. Everyone really just says funny. 平时用这种高级词汇就可以说 Hi, fancy ass. 别误会，这个可不是高级屁股的意思。fancy ass 也是高级，可是比较阴阳怪气儿，类似于装。比如 Why do you always go to these fancy-ass restaurants? I much prefer 兰州拉面. I saw your ex getting into her new boyfriend's fancy car today. Who cares about some fancy-ass car? 我也有车，自行车。Actually, I don't even have my own bike.
只有共享单车。
要注意 fancy dress 说的不是高级的衣服，而是 costume, cosplay 那种的。So if you're invited to a fancy dress party, wear a costume, not your best clothes. 第二种，喜欢人 is the same as crush. 一定是人 fancy 加东西不能表示喜欢。这个 fancy 只能用来说对某个人有意思，有点喜欢。但是已经在一起的话，说 fancy 会怪怪的。I really fancy you. Can I have your number? I fancy you. I met this cute guy at lunch. I really fancy him. I fancy you, fancy you. 第三种 fancy something or fancy 加 action， 这个表示的是想要，跟 want 一样，不是喜欢的意思。比如 I fancy pizza 是我现在想吃 pizza 的意思，不是我喜欢 pizza 的意思。Fancy a drink 等于 want a drink. Fancy liking this video 等于 do you want to like this video? Yes. Of course you want to. 第四种 think something will happen. Do you think China will win the World Cup in 2022? Nah, I fancy England. Come on, England. It's coming home. This makes me feel too sad. I fancy my chances of convincing you to like this video and following me. Fancy 其实还有很多不一样的意思，但是这几个比较常用。Oh yeah, I used to have a fancy Chinese name, 高云浩。高是因为我很高，云是因为我跟云一样白，浩是因为我很，but I kept forgetting how to write it. 反正云很简单。好，3点睡。
2 hours later.
好吧，现在关注、转发、投币。